Okay, so now it's my great pleasure to introduce the speaker and the subject today, which is 7 ways to boost creativity, health, and well-being. 3 things I've been looking for now for the last 50 years, so I'll be glad to find out how the hell you achieve them. Yeah, but so the first thing to say, Dr. Michelle Chappell, she came today. She moved recently to Atlanta. She's come this weekend all the way, largely for us today, to talk to us. So we thank you very much. That's a long distance, and we really appreciate that. Michelle has a remarkable history. She was a professor of psychology at Yale?
Santa Clara University.
Oh, Santa Clara. I'm sorry.
UCSE.
And UCSE. Professor of psychology at Santa Clara University and UCSE. Then decided to change her career and became a singer-songwriter worldwide, and spent some time in South Africa with great success there. Then decided to teach the world how to live their dreams and become a speaker and do the sorts of things we're seeing today, as well as write books, consult for companies, and help children and in schools, etc., etc. So, remarkable life. We're very lucky to have today Michelle Chappell. Welcome, Michelle.
Did it fall? Okay. Technical difficulties. Wait a minute.
You okay?
I don't know. I don't have it. Can somebody help me put this thing in my butt? Because I cannot see my own butt.
I've dreamt of that question all my life.
You're getting happiness already? Yeah.
And that's the answer to your question, Martin. Well, it's a pleasure to be back speaking with you again. Gosh, I think, have I done it not 10 times, 5 times? 5 times? Yeah. How many of you have heard me speak here before? Because I don't want to tell the same stories over and over again.
Okay, we have bad memory.
Oh, good. that works. Okay. Well, yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. If I break into a Southern accent at any moment, it's because I'm jet lagged, and I apologize, but it may happen. Yeah. So, yeah, I want to talk about the link between creativity and mental health and physical health. And I changed the topic title a little bit because, Martin read Ways, and I changed it to Secrets, because a lot of what I'm about to tell you, I think a lot of people don't know about, or it's countercultural. And so hopefully this will be interesting to you. It's very interesting to me. Martin sort of told you a lot of who I am, so that takes care of my first 2 slides. Because I always want to introduce but I actually am going to tell you something that you don't know. So this is pictures, a couple pictures that were taken of me for a student newspaper when I was at UCSE. And I also, before that, I taught at your school. Santa Clara University, and I have my PhD from Princeton, and I was doing very well as a professor. I was publishing research, and I had lots of students working with me as teaching assistants. But and a lot of them came to me for advice about what they should do with their lives, and I would always tell them to follow their hearts, and they would look so relieved because nobody else was telling them that. Their mothers and fathers would be telling them to go into a career to make money that they weren't interested in, or something like that. And I would always say, no, follow your heart. So one thing you don't know about me is that when I was teaching, I got very, very sick. When I was at Santa Clara, actually, I was actually diagnosed with an incurable disease. And it was hard for me to teach after a while. I had 3 surgeries, not a terminal disease, but an incurable disease. I had 3 surgeries in 1 year, and at one point I couldn't go in anymore to teach, and I was laid up at home. Have any of you ever been sick for a while? It's a bummer, isn't it? It really is, especially if you don't know what's going to happen and if it doesn't seem like it's getting better. So I started reading a lot about Eastern philosophies. I needed a new point of view. I needed to look at the world differently. So I started reading about Taoism, I read about Buddhism, I read about Hinduism, anything. Just give me an answer because I'm lost and I don't know what to do. And so, long story short, it was actually the dean of Santa Clara University recommended that I see a homeopath, and to me that was a weird idea because I was all about, I was trained to be a scientist and I believed in Western medicine, but the truth was Western medicine was kind of failing me at this point. And I saw a homeopath, and in 9 months I was cured. Incurable disease cured, never came back, and it cost me about $300. So I started to look at the world a lot differently after that, and I started thinking, I'm telling all these students to follow their hearts, but I wasn't following my heart because, as you know, what I really wanted to do was to be a rock and roll star, and that was a crazy idea because I was a professor, and that made no sense. And I think that maybe that's why I got sick, because I was in a career path that wasn't really true to who I am. And you know how they say that a job can suck the life out of you? I think it can. So I decided to follow my passion. And as you know, I went to South Africa, I had a top 10 hit there. And then I came back and I started teaching creativity workshops to help other people find their true passion too. Does that sound good so far? Any questions? Great. Thank you, and I'm done. All right. So who comes to take my creativity workshops? Actually, it used to be mostly, I would say, 30, 40, 50-year-olds. Now that I've been doing it for 18 years, I've had all the way from 8 years old up to 96. And you know what? We're all the same, basically. We really are, and that's something that's very interesting to me. So who takes my workshops? A lot of times people who feel like they're stuck, their life isn't very interesting, they're not doing anything, they're not moving forward. Maybe they have some kind of crisis, a health crisis. Maybe they got fired from their job. Maybe they're going through a divorce. Some of them, they just want to be more creative. Hello there. And after I was teaching for a couple years, and my course was called Creativity and Self-Actualization, Freeing the Artist Within. I thought that was cute. And a couple of my students came up to me one day and I said, do you really have to call it artist within? Because I feel like you can be creative in a lot more ways than just art, and they were right. They were right. So I just wanted to say right away that, when we talk about creativity, it doesn't just mean painting or playing music. It can also mean things like gardening, or how many of you are cooks? How many of you feel like you're a creative cook? How many people like your cooking? You never know, right? But you know what I mean? You can. Yeah, you're still alive. But you know what I mean? You can be creative, really, with anything you do. So it doesn't have to be art. So I wanted to just point that out right away. But so I noticed that when people would take my workshops, they would get happier as they were making breakthroughs. They had more energy. But something else I noticed is that they would look younger. Seriously, somebody would make a breakthrough and they would look younger, and it would stick. And it took me a while to connect the dots that what was happening in my workshops is not only were people finding some outlet to be creative but they were also getting healthier. And now it turns out there's all this research that shows that there actually is a link between creativity and health. How many of you are surprised by that? Nobody. Oh, okay. Does anybody care to say why you're not surprised by that? Yeah, please.
Research has found out.
Oh, hold on. He wants to, yeah. Yeah.
Research has shown that being positive helps your immune system.
Yes.
And I learned that back when I was 17 years old in Germany with a doctor who was trying to cure my cancer. And he told me to be positive. And he found out those that were more negative didn't last as long.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
I really appreciate that, and that's you're right. So and I'm going to go into that a little in more detail, but in general, just sort of an overview of what they're finding is if you spend some time being creative or having a creative point of view on the world, and I'll explain what that is in a little while, it lowers stress, it lowers anxiety, it cuts depression, it makes you happier. Isn't that cool? Yeah. It boosts your immune system, and it actually decreases the severity of chronic illnesses, cancer, arthritis, asthma, HIV, fibromyalgia. And when I say these things, these are all different researchers who are showing this. They're not all working together. This is what's fascinating to me. I don't think a lot of them even know about each other, but I've been reading and reading and reading, and it is absolutely fascinating. And also, this is the best part, if you spend a little bit of time being creative, you live longer. You actually live longer, and you live a better life. How many of you believe me? I got this side of the room. I got some. Okay, you're nodding. Okay, all right. I was blown away by that, and I can go into, if you want to ask me questions towards the end, I can explain to you why that is. But okay, so why is this important today? Because we are so stressed out. We are more stressed out than we've ever been in our society. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but Americans now are putting in longer work hours and getting shorter vacation times than any other developed country in the world. Did you know that?
Yes.
Including Japan. And we're running around stressed out of our minds. And you can see some statistics up there. 83% of Americans are stressed out by their jobs. That's a lot of people. Some physicians believe that 80% of our illnesses are stress-related. And I just dug this little fact up a couple of days ago. I didn't know this one. Right now, there are more 65 and older people in the United States than any time in U.S. history. And it's going up. So if it's going to increase your lifespan and increase the quality of your life, there's a lot of people that might be interested in that fact, right? Yeah? Okay. So, what is creativity? You know, a lot of people feel like it's this mysterious thing that happens. You know, you just sit in a room and, wow, somebody's being creative out there. And it descends upon you, and, you know, and there you have an idea. It's actually not that mysterious. And it's not just about art, and it's not just about science. It's actually a skill that we all have, and we all had as children. And we just tend to lose it as we get older because, basically because we're told to conform to, you know, what our families want us to do, to what our teachers want us to do. And the more we conform, the more we lose our individual sense of how we look at the world. And that's where a lot of creative ideas come from. So you can get that back, and you can get better at it. And one definition of creativity, or there's two up here that I want to really point out, but one is just expressing yourself uniquely, which is just what I was referring to. When you start to conform to other people's ideas of who you should be, you don't express your own voice anymore, but you have your own voice, you have your own way of looking at the world. If I right now were to hand out pens and pieces of paper and ask all of you to write a poem, none of you would write the same poem. You all have different ways of expressing yourself, so you're all different from each other. So just finding that makes you creative right away. But the other thing I want to just keep in mind, because this is something that's been shown to be to correlate with health, is having a creative attitude. And a creative attitude means being open-minded, believing in possibilities. Okay, does anybody have any idea why that could lead to a healthier life? Do you want to say? Do you want to? Yeah. See, I'm getting you in physical shape.
You are. One of the three.
It gives you a reason to live.
It does give you a reason to live. If there's possibilities, there's always something else that you can do. Anybody else have any guesses? Yeah.
Well, if you're open-minded, you can still learn things, and learning
Yes.
by itself keeps you young.
That is That is it. That is actually that is it. That's very, very good. So, all right, let's talk about creativity and mental health. So here are some of the things that being creative gives you. And we've already talked about some of these things, so I'm not just going to read them. But it gives you purpose. It improves your problem-solving skills. You're more resilient. If you find yourself, caught in a bad situation in your life, you're more likely to find an answer to it. It gives you a greater sense of satisfaction. It makes you feel better about yourself. But you know what else? Being creative is therapeutic. Does that make sense? How many of you would have thought that? If you're expressing yourself creatively, it's actually therapeutic. Do you have any thought about that, or do you just want to... It looks like she has a thought, Martin. Come on.
There's a thought in the room.
No, I think when you create something and it comes from you rather than the people around you, that it is therapeutic, and it's a matter of, oh gosh, senior moment.
It's okay.
It's an expression of the fact that you are in control at some times, and no one else is dictating what you're doing.
That's
so
true.
I think that improves the way you feel about yourself.
Yes, yes. And you also show yourself that you can create something. So you've got, do you have a thought? You look like you do. This is a really interesting way to raise your hand. That's creative. Yeah, there, right there. Yeah.
So I went to listen to a talk, and the talk was about when your left brain and your right brain are used equally, that's when you are most creative. And that is also the moment that your body start to heal itself. So that's why being creative is to being in that brain, that when your left brain and right brain are working to the same intensity.
I agree with that general idea. What they're showing is that when you're creative, you use lots of different parts of your brain. So because you're doing that, you're increasing the connections between the different parts of your brain. And that's very good for your mental health, as you can imagine, but also for your physical health. So I'm a lot older than I look. So I've been teaching these workshops for 18 years. And
Over 30.
Huh?
You're probably over 30.
I'm not telling. But you're going to probably figure it out. Anyway, but when I first started teaching these workshops, I was having people keep journals. And I was keeping one myself. And I noticed that I was starting to get happier just by keeping a journal, just about my life. How many of you keep journals? Okay, interesting. But right around the time so I'm going to really date myself, and now you're going to see how old I really am. When I first started teaching these workshops, there was a woman, Anne Rice, who came out with this novel called Interview with the Vampire. Do you remember her? Does anybody remember her?
Yeah.
And they turned it into a movie later that I thought. Anyway, so I read this novel. I was fascinated by her, and she happened to be at Capitola Book Cafe, and I went to see her speak. And I thought when I was going to meet her that she would be like this dark kind of presence. Because, she wrote about vampires, and there was a child vampire, Claudia, 5 years old. I mean, that's kind of gruesome, And I thought she would just be so heavy and just witchy, and I couldn't believe she was the opposite of that. She was so happy. When she laughed, it sounded like bells were ringing. And I thought at one point she was going to float right off of her chair. And I thought, this is very interesting. How did I have her so wrong? And then I started researching her. And do you know what? She had a daughter named Michelle who died at age 5 of a rare form of leukemia. Do you know what she did after her daughter died? She wrote Interview with the Vampire in 5 weeks. Do you see where I'm going with this? And because she worked it out in that novel. And it's interesting that she made the little girl, Claudia, a vampire because she needed life-sustaining blood, which her daughter needed too. So that's when I first started connecting the dots, because she clearly was mentally healthier for that. Do you see that? Do you agree? Okay. So now I want to tell you about a study. A guy named James Pennebaker did a really interesting study, and you may want to try this on yourself. So he's in University in Austin, and he did a writing study, so it's kind of creativity. He had undergraduates, 2 groups. One wrote about a traumatic event in their lives, and the other just wrote about something superficial. They only did it for 20 minutes, 4 days. Are you with me? Okay. And then he checked in with them 6 weeks later. The group that had written about traumatic events were happier. They had better moods, less depression. You know what else? They also had fewer visits to the health center than the ones who had just written about superficial stuff. This is just 4 days, 20 minutes made that much of a difference, significant difference. Is anybody feeling inspired by this? I mean, it doesn't take much to turn things around, right? Okay. So what I find is interesting is now he is showing that physical health improves too. So I couldn't help it. I had to put both of them on there. I know. I could have just done the heart with the dumbbell, but no, I found the brain with the dumbbell, and I'm like, yeah, let's put them both on there because they just look so healthy. But basically, if you're creative, it lowers stress. Now, why is stress bad for the body? Does anybody know? Inflammation? Tension? Heart disease? Really, it's stress is so terrible for our bodies. So it reduces stress. It boosts your immune system. How many of you are tired? Have you ever tired? And probably the last thing you want to do is pick up a paintbrush, right? And you're probably sitting in front of the television like this. Do you know that if you were to turn your program off for half an hour and noodle on a guitar, or just, maybe scroll something in a notebook, or just do that you would have more energy the next day? Did you know that? Have you ever tried it? Has anybody tried? You've tried it. Am I right? Yes. She said I'm right. Thank you, and I'm done. No. You've tried it too? Oh, you have a question? Okay.
Your question struck something I've been trying to figure out. I've long observed this creativity thing, and I have all these little games laying around that I pick up and play with, and blocks. And I have seen that the next generation is not playing little games, they're playing little games on their phone. The question arises is, we know that playing with little blocks is better than vegging and watching the TV, but is playing with your phone closer to playing with blocks or vegging and watching the TV?
That's a loaded question. Probably meant for our Santa Clara young men. Okay, I will digress for a second. I have done research all across the country with high school and college students in Silicon Valley, in Chicago, and in Atlanta. And I can tell you that I have seen with in my own 2 eyes, and another researcher who did the work with me, that being online all the time is not good for you. It stresses you. It adds more stress. Having said that, though, I don't want to say to you guys that, if your way of writing a song, for example, for me it's picking up a guitar and noodling. For you, it might be using a music program online. It really depends on what you're using it for. So I can't just give you a straight agreement. But if you feel like you have to be connected to social media all the time, there's research that actually shows that it leads to depression and anxiety. So it all depends on how you use it. It's a tool. Okay. I did really well with that. Didn't I handle that well? But here's some other cool things. It improves overall cognitive functioning because of what you were saying before about the right brain and the left brain, because you're stimulating different areas and they're connecting because of that. It stems the advance of dementia and Alzheimer's. That's important, just by keeping active. And as I said before, it reduces the severity of a lot of severe illnesses. So, remember we were talking about the James Pennebaker study with the undergraduates? Remember? That was like talking about dementia, Alzheimer's disease. He did it with undergraduates. These people sort of replicated what he did, but he did it with patients now. And these patients either had rheumatoid arthritis or they had asthma. And so what he did is he had two conditions with each of these people. Either they wrote about something stressful or they wrote about something superficial. And long and behold, what do you think they found? Well, it's right there on the slide. But severity of arthritis decreased just by writing about traumatic events.
Just a quick
Yeah.
clarification. We're talking cursor, we're not talking typing on.
You can type in. You can. Yeah. I don't think they made it just have to be cursive. Yeah. And by the way, it's mild to moderately severe arthritis. Obviously, if it was very severe arthritis, they wouldn't have been able to write. But so I just want to clear that up. And also, people with asthma had increased lung function. So they have like a little breathalyzer thing that they blow into, and they see how much you can fill it in a second. And the people who had written about stressful events were able to fill it 73.6% versus 63.9%. And if you do the statistics, it's significantly different. So do you understand the implications of this? You don't have to take a pill. We live in a society that gives us pills for everything now. And we're at an all-time high for stress and depression and anxiety. We're on pills for everything. And in fact, sometimes maybe all it takes is picking up a paintbrush. And you don't have to be good. You don't have to be good at it. Just do it. It's fun. I see one person nodding. Okay. This one I really love. And it'll speak to you because thank you for sharing that you had cancer. Oops, I went the wrong way. I just had to show you my little, those are not turning you on the way they turn me on apparently. I just think, look at the heart. Okay, anyway. Another piece of research, patients in hospitals that have chronic illnesses and cancer, they compared people who were able to paint or do some kind of visual art while they were in the hospital with people who didn't. Are you ready for this? I think this is amazing. This is when I really started to get blown away, honestly. Okay, shorter hospital stays, less pain medication, happier, less feelings of depression and anxiety because they're involved in their art, so they're thinking about their art. They're in the middle of doing that. And better medical outcome just from painting. I'll just let that sit. I just personally was blown away. I wouldn't have expected it to do this much, but it does. And oh, by the way, I just had to stick this picture in. Does anybody know who that is? That's Frida Kahlo. You know her story, right? She was in a terrible bus accident, and it severed parts of her spine, and she had to be in bed many times, actually. And that's where she discovered that she actually could paint, and she became a very famous artist. So that's how she turned herself into an artist. She was very resilient. Okay, I like this part right here. Creativity and healthy aging. I would highly recommend that you guys get online and watch a TED Talk by this guy named Tim Carpenter. He's got a very fun way of looking at aging. My mother is now in a retirement community, and I visit her, and she's bored out of her mind. They do bingo, and they do bingo. And that's what a lot of them are like. And you know, we work so hard, we're working harder than the Japanese now, and then we can't wait to retire, and then we retire and we're playing bingo? No. So he has a different take on it, and he, you know, a couple of years ago I talked about the hero's journey in here, and some of you might remember that, and we go through different stages, and you know, graduating from college is a stage, getting married is a stage, but also retiring is a stage. It's a stage of life, and every time you go through a new stage of life, it's a chance to redefine who you are and to align with your values. And so he's putting a lot of emphasis on, as somebody said it, lifelong learning. Rather than, no, it's the end and now I can relax and look at the golf course because I'm too tired to actually play golf, pick up a paintbrush. So he's been experimenting with this, and I think he's only done it with one retirement community so far, but he has done it with one, and he has, all of these people have access to different kinds of, you know, paintbrushes and musical instruments, and they have classes and they create things, and these people are doing really, really well. Isn't that cool? So and a lot of times, I mean, I can tell you now, because I've taught people all the way up to 96 now, people sometimes they find a whole new way of expressing themselves that they didn't even know they could do in their 60s and their 70s and their 80s. Sometimes people learn that they can paint and they didn't even know they could do that yet. You're not done until you're done. You know, I'm hoping to inspire you. You know, also, okay. Let's say that you do get to the point where you have dementia, and you know, and then you are starting to slip away. But there's also some very interesting research. Karhoff and Wiggins have done it, and maybe you know about this. But if somebody has dementia, and you play a song that they know, have any of you heard of this? They remember who they are for a little while, and they kind of snap out of it. That's music. So the power of music. I'm sure there are more of them, but I'm just discovering them now. But there's a National Center for Creative Aging now in DC. There are people who are putting thought into this because it's worth putting thought into. So you might want to check some of these things out. Is anybody feeling inspired, I hope? I find it inspiring. Especially when I look at my mother, because she's an artist, and for her to just sit there and atrophy, that makes no sense to me. So why not have access to things to help you? Yeah? And then, okay, here's, I had to put this picture up there. You know how old that woman is? She's 92 years old. Look at that. I love that. But anyway, there was a guy, he's still alive, Nicholas Turiano. He studied men, and he had them take a lot of different tests, and he was trying to categorize them in lots of different ways. And some of them were, you know, how smart are you, how this, how that. And he found there was only one description or attribute that correlated with living a longer life, and it was the willingness to entertain novel ideas. It's back to our possibilities. You know, Emily Dickinson said, dwell in possibility. If you believe there's another way, then it keeps you looking for options. It keeps you engaged. Does that make sense? Yeah. So apparently, just having, you don't even have to pick up a paintbrush necessarily, as long as you keep that kind of frame of mind. Yeah? How many of you are willing to entertain novel ideas? How many of you are willing to entertain this idea? Okay, good. Okay, so how much time do I have left? Okay, not that much. So I'll just do it sort of quickly. So, no, I did that. God, I keep going backwards. So 7 secrets to boosting creativity. I'll just spend maybe a lot of time on a couple of them and then just go quickly through others. But let me talk about, since we're talking about possibilities, how many of you have ever heard of a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by a guy named Suzuki? Okay, so think like a novice. Well, you may be looking at me going, well, honey, you might be able to think like a novice, but I've been here too long to do that. Not true. It's actually not true. Because thinking like a novice, well, let me just read to you. Let's see if I can find it here. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the experts, there are few. So a lot of times, we live in a world where you think if you're an expert, then you've got a line on things and everybody should talk to you about how it's done. But it turns out a lot of times when somebody is new to something, they do better. So for example, people who change careers like into something drastically different are more creative than people who have been in that career for a while. How many of you have ever traveled? How many of you have traveled outside the U.S. to a foreign country where they speak funny language? Have you noticed that when you get out of your own element, you see things a little bit differently? Have you? Yeah, you're kind of more alive. You're seeing things freshly because you don't really know how it works in that country. Okay, so I just want to tell a quick story because it's worth it. Yeah, I'm going to spend a time on this and then go through the others a little bit more quickly. But remember I told you I had an incurable disease? So there was one workshop I was teaching called Reinventing Yourself. And I remember I had a woman in this workshop, and she'd never sat down. And she was leaning up against the back wall with her arms crossed, her chest like this, looking at me like she just couldn't stand me. And I'm like, what'd I do? I'm nice. But it was because I was talking about this incurable disease I had and how I had opened my mind and tried some new things and I was cured. And the more I talked about it, the more she was so mad at me. And so she, I will call her Barbara, she came up to me at the end of one of the first day and she said, I'm a therapist and I ran a marathon and I slipped a disc and I can't walk normal anymore and that's why I'm leaning up against the wall because I can't sit and I really don't like hearing you talk about how you were cured. And I'm like, and the funny thing is the room was full of therapists, because it was a lot of therapists take my workshops. And so I looked at her and I had compassion for her because I knew exactly why she was angry, because she thought she was dead in the water with her situation and she was never going to get better. And so I said to her, I know how you feel because I felt like that too for a long time, but then I just decided that I was gonna believe in possibilities. And then I talked to her about, what visualization is? Because there's research too, cancer especially, that shows us that you in your mind's eye, visualize yourself being healthy. And I did that myself with my situation, that it helps you heal. And so, and I told her that, and she looked at me and she goes, I might try it, I don't know. I might. And I never saw her again, right? I thought. So then, I think it was about 5 months later, I was teaching another workshop on creativity, and so it was as if the door was there. So I'm teaching this way, and the class had just started, the first time we ever met, and this woman kind of rushed in, and I just kind of noticed her go by, and and then I started, and then all of a sudden I did a double take. It was Barbara, and so she told me, I really want to share this with you because this is how strong this can be. She shared with me during the break that she decided to try the visualization after all. And so she pictured herself, she told me, walking pain-free, and she did it every day. And that's exactly what she was now doing, walking pain-free. And she also shared with me that she had been in a wheelchair before that, and I didn't know that. So I just really want you to, really take in. And by the way, the next person who answers a question I ask correctly gets a free visualization CD, because after she made that amazing recovery, my students asked me if I would record, because I would do these visualization exercises in class. So I have one here. So at some point I'm going to ask a question and somebody's going to win this. Okay, so how many of you believe that this is a good strategy? Okay, you think you can do it? It's so easy. Do something you've never done before. Try learning a new language. Beginner's mind is just being in a new situation. You just put yourself in it, okay? Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering if that technique that you used for Barbara is similar to the one where back probably in the 60s there was a visualization in order to learn something before you were actually there.
Same
for
thing.
instance, I learned how to ski at home visualizing, and when we got on the slopes, I was actually able to do a lot of the moves.
They train astronauts that way too. Yeah, it's interesting. The body-mind connection is very interesting. It's very interesting because what you think affects the way the neurons connect with each other. It affects the transmitters that are being released, which affects the way your body reacts. How many of you, I hope you guys are believing me, because I may not have a chance to talk to your group anymore since I've moved to Atlanta, so I really want to leave you with a big wow. I hope. Okay, now let me run through the other ones. One is trust your gut. First thing that pops into your mind. We as children, we were told no, and I wanted to bite my brother in the leg, and my mother said no. I wanted to eat cat food. She said no. She should have. But what happens after a while is you get so many no's, you stop. You still have those impulses, and they're not all, biting people. They're also like, what I really would like to do is I would like to start watercoloring again. And a real quick story, I always have my people in my workshops go home and try a project. I had one woman, she thought it'd be fun to do watercoloring with her 8-year-old daughter, and she came back the next week and said it was so interesting because they both had a canvas in front of them and they had their paints, and her mother said, okay, let's get started. And her daughter just dived in and she's just going, I wonder what I should paint. And that's what happens to us. You know what I'm saying? But the impulses that her daughter had, she had them too. She was just suppressing them. We still have them. It's just it's becoming mindful of the first thoughts that pop into your mind. You all have a superpower. Did you know that? Yes, you do. Yes, we all know that Superman can fly, and Wonder Woman can, with her bracelets, she can ward off bullets and things like that. But everybody has a superpower. There's a concept called PU, P'-U, in Taoism, which means people and things have power in their natural state. It means uncarved block. Basically, when you just let yourself be who you are, you have a unique gift that nobody else has, but you may not know it because you're so used to having it that you figure everybody else has it too. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, I will tell you a story about me. I went to Princeton. I was studying psychology. I was going to be a professor. I didn't know I was going to end up at Santa Clara, but I did. But in the meantime, that was my whole life. I was engaged to be married, and he dumped me when I was at Princeton. I was so sad. So what did I do? I thought, well, I have a lot of empty evenings now, which I should be studying, but I'm sad. So I'm going to take a guitar class and hopefully meet a man. And I think maybe some of you know this story, but I haven't told it in a while, so I don't know if I have told it to this group. But so I walk into this room, and it's full of nuns. I know, and I thought, okay, that's a sign, okay. So anyway, long story short, she's forcing us to sing and play guitar at the same time, which is hard, and I'm kind of learning, and I'm singing, and she keeps saying, who is that? Who is that voice? And I don't know who she... And after a while, I started to realize it was me, but I didn't know. But somebody had to tell me. But I'm telling you, everybody in here has something like that you don't even know you have. You're sitting on it. You may be literally, I don't know. Anyway, so you have a superpower. So if you trust your instincts, you're more likely to find it. If you shake up your routines, you're more likely to find it. You know something you could do just to say, yes, I believe in this talk and maybe I'll let it affect my life a little bit, is when you drive home today, take a different route home. Just take a different route home. It stimulates your brain. It keeps you more engaged and alive. Or listen to a different kind of music on the radio when you go home and in the car. It's as simple as that. Okay. How many of you were, maybe not too many people anymore, because I think some people are retired in here, but how many people just feel like you work too hard? Yeah. Okay, yeah, okay, that's 4 of us. All right. Sometimes, yeah. You know, yin yang, the symbol is all about yang is hard work, but yin is receptive energy, and you actually, to lead a balanced, healthy life, you need to do both. But I have a feeling a lot of you are already doing that, so I'm preaching to the choir. But you need to do both, and we live in a society that's very yang-driven, especially Silicon Valley. Oh my God. Can you just put an extra hour into that before you leave tonight, and then it ends up being like 4 hours? How many of you ever done that at work? Yeah. So and research shows, by the way, that if you take breaks and come back, say a 15-minute break, you actually get more done and you're more productive and it's higher quality. Very countercultural. Thank you. I see one head who gets that. Okay, good. And it's really true. Be willing to experiment and fail. You guys have seen my learning curve before. I show it every time. People are scared to try something new for the first time because why? They're going to be terrible at it. And they give up. So what advice, just looking at that curve, do you give them? Hang in there, because you will get better. And by the way, failure is always in the eyes of the beholder, because failure just means you're getting feedback to improve what you're doing. It's not, you can take the sting of failure out of it. And you know what? Some pretty famous people, I don't know if you can see who these are, have failed miserably. Did you know that Oprah Winfrey was demoted from a job as a news anchor because they said she did not have the it factor for television? I'm just letting you know that just because somebody. And the Beatles, Decca Records said, we don't hear a sound that's going to last in the future. Sorry, the Beatles. So somebody says you failed, don't take it that seriously. Okay, and the last thing, the payoff. I'm going to leave some room for questions. The payoff for becoming creative is if you give yourself a little space and time to do something, you can get into a flow state. Do you know what a flow state is?
Yes. Did I win the question?
You won the question. Please come up here and get your... Thanks for remembering. And your name is?
Kay.
Kay.
Culpepper, a painter.
Oh, yes. Good. How many of you have a mean little voice in your head that criticizes you on and off during the day? Anybody? Oh, nobody wants to admit it. Okay. This part of the room is like, I do. I do. You're old. Why would anybody want to listen to your ideas? Your writing sucks. I'm like, who are you? Nah. So what happens though, it's great. If when you get into a flow state, guess what happens to that voice? It goes bye-bye. Because when you're in a flow state, you're 100% in the moment. So for me, the way it feels, because it's different for different people. For you, it might be writing. For you, it might be painting. For you, it might be hiking. It depends on who you are. For me, it's singing. When I start getting into a groove, whether I'm by myself or with a band, this is what it feels like. Guitar disappears, mic disappears, people disappear, and all I am is music. Has anybody had an experience like that, but not maybe with music, but with something else? You want to aim for that. And the way you aim for that is to give yourself something to do that's a little hard to do, but not too hard to do. And the reason why I have a picture of a guy skiing is because I have this friend named Mike, and when I was telling him about getting into a flow, and he goes, "Oh, I know exactly what you mean, because I do that when I ski, because what I like to do is like, I like to," he's a little jacked up, as you can tell, but he's like, "I really like to ski, and what I like to do is I like to go down slopes as fast as I can, because so that I almost am going to break my neck, but I don't break my neck." And I'm like, and that's what you mean, right? Is that what you mean? And I'm like,
No.
well, kind of, so what is it about going down like that? And he said, well, because I'm in the moment. Because I'm in the moment. I have to be so careful about what I do. And I said, but you don't go down slopes that are too hard for you. And he goes, oh, no, because then I'd break my neck. But it's the same thing, right? And I have a guy up there, I have Frank Sinatra, because I taught an Air Force colonel who retired, and he wanted to write a popular song. And oh my God, he had so many critics in his head, but I got him to finally be able to get into a flow writing on the piano by letting him do it his way. I did it my way, So the flow state is where you want to let yourself go, because it is such a relief from that ongoing voice, and it makes you healthier and happier. So those are my 7 little tricks. I want to tell all of you, no matter how old or young you are, it's never too late or too early to be creative. It's so easy. You don't have to be great. You're allowed to suck, especially at first, and it will help you feel wonderful about your life. And one thing to keep in mind, there's a reminder of what they are, is, I don't know if anybody recognizes this thing. I had to put it up there. Does anybody recognize this thing? It's really important if you are going to go down this path, which all of you are, right? Because this is my wow. It's really important to have at least one other person do it with you. Find a tribe. You guys are a tribe. So you could actually find somebody in here to do it with. The reason why I have this, it's an old song by Blind Melon, but they have a music video where this little girl is wearing a bee costume, and she gets up there and she does her little dance, and then everybody laughs at her. And she runs away, and she's so sad, and you see her all through the video. She's running down these streets, and she tries to dance for people, and you're like, you're a weird bee girl. Go away. And at the end of the video, I don't know if you can see it, but she finds this gate where she finds other bee people. And she's so happy. So a lot of times when you start letting yourself be creative, you might feel a little weird because maybe your friends aren't doing it or your family isn't doing it. But if you find one other person to sort of be your co-conspirator or whatever, you'll stick with it and be happy. Okay. And I just wanted to end to let you guys know that I'm actually teaching a workshop on this, a 9-week-long workshop. If anybody wants to find out more about it, I'd be very happy to tell you more about it. But that basically is it. Thank you.
So Michelle, you brought your guitar, though. Are you going to?
I could, unless there's questions.
Maybe we take a couple of questions.
Does anybody want to ask me a question?
And then we can have a song?
Yeah.
When you mentioned that you went to this class about the guitar, it made me think of a famous movie with Debbie Reynolds called The Singing Nun.
You said that last year when I spoke here.
Oh, well, maybe there are some new people here. But just in case, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one last thing. I ran into this book. Somebody recommended it to me. Mm-hmm. It's called The Blue Zones. It's about the written by Amanda Wright for the National Geographic, and it's a team that went around the world finding the places in the world where the highest percentage of people over 100 exist. It's a wonderful book.
Yeah.
Don't miss it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that recommendation. Was there a question? I thought I saw a fluttering of it. Yes. Wait.
I think you are an advertisement for my beginning watercolor class. So I'd like to invite anyone who is willing to come to the Pacific Art League in the middle of February, if you so choose.
I would go if I lived here. But seriously, if any of you want to investigate taking a workshop with me, it's long distance, but it's interactive. Let me know. Any other questions before I sing you a song? Yeah,
Oh, where? Sorry?
right there.
I'm curious about what you say about balance, the yin and yang. Can you give us more examples of how to increase the yin part?
Yeah. So let's say you're sitting at your desk at work and you're working on a project and you're trying to solve a problem and it's starting to be diminishing returns because you know how that happens when you work for a really long time and you're not getting as much out of yourself anyway? Okay, that's yang, that's the hard work. So what I would recommend you do, seriously, is get out of your chair, go outside, take a walk, or do anything that's repetitive as a break. So swimming, hiking, sweeping, and you only need maybe 15 minutes, but what happens is you're now in yin, okay? You're not thinking about the problem anymore, you're not trying to solve it. Okay? You're taking a break. And what happens is, especially if you do a repetitive meditation, yoga, if you do something like that, but you don't even have to, just as long as your mind is quiet, what often happens is out of nowhere, the solution presents itself. And I have a degree in cognitive psychology, and they call that an incubation period. Many scientists have figured this out. Mathematicians have figured this out. There was one mathematician who used to drink 6 cups of coffee before he would go to sleep at night because he knew in his dreams he might get an answer. But that's yin, that's rest. So, and the funny thing is, you come back to work and you think you wasted the time, but you didn't, because then you're able to go back to that project and finish it really quick with an insight. So that's a way of doing it. It's countercultural, but actually there's so much research that shows that that's a more effective way to work. And then you're happier and healthier. Is it? Yes.
Your philosophies are not really popular with,
your philosophies are not very popular with pharmaceutical, medical, big food.
I know.
We could think about it. We could list a lot more.
Yeah, I know.
How would you?
Oops.
How would you get the individual? We can take your philosophies as individuals, and be helpful for ourselves. And I think most of us here have some ways participated in your philosophies. But how do you get that philosophy to spread through a tribal area and in a country area and in a world area where I just don't know how to get there. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I've still, what it boils down to is kind of making a new political party and probably a new religion. So.
It is a new belief system. It is.
Yeah.
I think David has got a question. Yeah.
I think it's more of a comment because.
Are you on? I think you're not on.
Well, let's see.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, I think it's more of for me, it's you live it as you do it, and you have to migrate that attitude to those immediately around you. So if you are taking your break, if you're working hard and you decide, I have to go out in the garden to stare at a flower for a while, or to walk around and pick some herbs out of the garden, or do something, and people start yelling at you, why aren't you solving the problem you're supposed to be solving? I say, why don't you take a break too?
Well, what's funny is I gave not this talk, but a talk on innovation at Yahoo a few years ago, and I talked about that point of taking a break. But I spoke to a whole group of people that were on the UX team, so they were all working together, and the manager was there, and because they were all hearing it together at the same time, they actually accepted the idea. It was interesting, and they were starting to throw out ideas of how to keep that new culture going? Like, do you like send a little reminder to somebody, did you take your break today? Or to start to organize meetings so that there maybe were 2 hours free during the day so that you could take your break. So I was actually amazed that once the idea was brought up in a group setting, it was the right manager, it was the right kind of manager. He had an open mind, but he was willing to try it. And he loved the idea. Oh, you know why? Also because I think I demonstrated inside of that talk and that workshop that it does generate good ideas, because I had them do some exercise where they generated some new ideas by taking a break. So I think that's another way of doing it. Writing books, giving lectures, that's what I'm trying to do. Just wake awareness, just, and
These
find other
questions,
people
we're
to
not going to
join
get a
you.
song.
Excuse me. I read that if you take a break from your computer every half hour, you're in better shape than if you stay there and then go and do a vigorous exercise thing. It's still better.
That makes sense to me too. Yeah. It's not good. There's all new research showing that if you're what do they call it? Not sedated. Sedentary. Sedated's not cool either. If you're sedated or sedentary, it's very bad for you.
When you talked about music, it reminded me of this musical of Rodgers and Hammerstein II called Carousel, and which actually was about the first one they wrote, and then they wrote a bunch of others like Oklahoma and so on and so forth. But they said that the one that they thought was their best was the first one, because there is in it a song that basically goes when you are in the a night and you don't know where the road is taking, keep your head on high, because at the end of the road there's a rainbow. And so I wish I could sing it, but it's such a fantastic song that there are many CDs that have popular songs and so on, and they have that as the last song, which means it's the best.
Aww. And plus there's also something called the serial position curve that psychologists have shown that the first thing, like if you have a list of things, you'll remember the first thing the best and the last thing the best. So that's smart. Do you guys want me to do a song, or are we running over?
No, song.
No? Yeah? No? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Do it, okay. Just get it over. Okay. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Don't worry, baby. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Don't worry, baby. Sometimes things go wrong and you feel all alone. Don't be scared if you don't know what to do, 'cause I've got something I want to tell ya. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Don't worry, baby. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Don't worry, baby. Just trust that you'll find an answer deep inside. Open your heart, close your eyes, and be still. I promise that you'll discover everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Don't worry, baby. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Don't worry, baby. You don't know for sure what the future will hold, so you may as well let it go. everything. Everything. Hey, are you listening? Ha. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Don't worry, baby. Don't worry, baby. Don't worry, baby. Don't worry, baby. 'Cause everything will be alright. Thank you. Thanks for being such a great audience. I'm going to miss you guys.
Thank you very much. Is lunch ready, guys?
Thank you.
A yay or nay from anybody? Yay? Nay? 2 more minutes? 2 more minutes. Any question? One more question
Anybody
for
have
Michelle?
any more questions?
Was that a question? Or a yawn? Couldn't tell.
So speaking of songs, can songs affect this the physical and mental? In other words, just the
there you are.
listening to violent music, can that cause problems?
I don't know about research regarding that in particular. I do know that there's research that shows watching violent television and watching violent movies leads to more violence in children. So I can guess that that's probably the case. I know that that I try to write positive songs because I think that when people listen to positive songs, they believe in themselves more and they know they have choices and stuff. So that's a choice I've made. I think it may be the case that some of these songs that are violent, maybe people are working out their stuff. I really don't know, but my guess would be it could be harmful. It really kind of depends on the particular song.
Could you put again the slide with the 7 ways to boost I never put before?
What do you want me to do? To put the slide back up? Yeah. By the way, don't you just love that little bee girl? Is it just me? I just love that bee girl. You only have to really do one of these things, and one of these things might speak to you more than the other, but they all lead to the same place. So I just wanted to let you know, don't feel overwhelmed by 7 things. Just try one. Yeah.
How do you quiet the inner critic?
Okay, so let me talk about that some more. Yes, can you please put this on my butt again? All right. I can't get it in there.
My pleasure.
There's this book. It's really interesting. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. Has anybody ever heard of it? A guy named Tim Galway wrote it. And he said he noticed something very interesting, that when he was teaching people how to play tennis, if they would miss a shot, and he would say, yeah, you missed a shot, blah, 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 they would miss the next shot. Not surprising, right? He also found that when people made a good shot, and he would say, good shot, they would miss the next shot. So it's more than just the inner critic, it's really the editor that's talking, because sometimes it can be saying nice things to you, but don't be sucked in by that. I just want to widen your question a little bit. So I'll give you an example. So this would be me dealing with that kind of thing. So I'm writing a song, okay, inner critic. Oh God, that song sounds just like the song that you wrote yesterday. My God, you're so boring. Okay, am I in the moment? No. Okay, but here's another thing. I'm writing a song, and it goes, oh my God, I think that could be a hit. Guess what? Nothing. So what you want to do is you want to be able to get yourself in the moment. So how do you do that? So for Tim Galway, I feel like I'm almost feeding back. For Tim Galway, what he told his students to do was stop thinking about the swing, watch the ball as it's coming over the net, and look at the seam of the ball. So they did that, and they started making good shots. Why? It took them out of the judgment game. So what you want to do is you want to get yourself out of the judgment game. And the best way to get out of the judgment game is to find some kind of activity, like I was talking about my friend who skis, that engages you pretty fully, that you get... How many of you have ever done something where you started to lose the sense of time? Anybody done that? Have you ever done anything that where you lose the sense of time? Could be experiment, right? Experiment, because there will be something that you can do where you will start to lose sense of time, because that's also a little indicator of what your unique gift is. So, like, it might be painting for you, it might be photography for you, it might be writing for you, you know. Could be cooking, could be running, could be, okay, not cooking. Okay, cooking, no. But what happens is if you find yourself in a pretty challenging situation, but not too challenging, it will take all of your senses and you will be in the moment and the critic is gone. And that's the best way to do it. So just experiment and find that thing where time disappears. And it'll come back. But at least be mindful, you know. Oh, you know something else you can do? Have you guys ever heard of a mantra or a mantram? There's this guy named Eknath Easwaran, and I learned from him to have a mantram, and I actually have the same one that Mahatma Gandhi had, which is Rama. So this could really work for you. So I'll just share with. So what I do is when I'm in a stressful situation or hearing things, in my mind, I say Rama, 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 and what it does is you've got a cell assembly that's used to firing when that inner critic is saying something mean. It interrupts it. So if you keep doing it, you actually start to weaken that connection, and then eventually the inner critic with that particular message does go away. So that's another thing you could try. That's a good one. I don't know why it took me so long to find that in my back pocket, but...
So I think there's maybe one dish left, but I think we can begin with lunch, and that dish will arrive as we eat.
Question there.
Oh, there's another question?
One more.
Then we can wait for the final dish.
Yeah. Trust your gut. Trust your gut. Doing something that you think that you should do, have to do, I should, okay, I'm looking for a creative outlet. I should try writing because my father was a writer. I told a story about that last year to you guys, versus a gut feeling that says, no, I want to draw. So one is a should, and one is more just a thought that pops into your head almost without you meaning for it to. If that makes sense. That's your creative impulse talking to you. Yeah. Or you're driving down the road and all of a sudden it says, no, go left. And you're like, oh, really? You know, just trust it. And sometimes you'll end up in an interesting place. I ended up in Atlanta. I kind of did that. Anyway, yeah, it is. Okay, that's. Thank you guys again
for being so
wonderful. Thank you.